All right, guys. Hey, how's everybody doing today? It's going to be a great day. I'm really excited about the content that we're going to be talking about. One of the things that I have been noticing is that most of us are wanting some more practicality, some how to kind of moving into our business. And so today is going to be some simple concepts, some a little bit more advanced concepts, but we're going to talk about what it looks like to become a true neighborhood expert. Okay. And so if you're joining us today, my name is Randy Olive. I am going to be, I guess, teaching or coaching or training, whatever you may look at it. I run a market center here in Houston, Texas. And one of the things that I'm always looking at is how I can give back into the community. And one of these ways is through training. And so the way I look at it is a rising tide raises all ships. And my hope is that in our moments together that I can help improve your business and give you an actionable item that can go immediately into creating bigger, better, more, whatever that may be for you. So really appreciate it. I have Crystal who's on our chat and she'll be monitoring some of that feed. You're welcome to pop any of your chat in there. As you can see, it'll scroll there at the bottom and we'll get to see what's happening in your world. Crystal is my executive assistant, absolutely brilliant. And so without any further ado, guys, if you're good with it, I want to jump into what we have to talk about today. So again, talking about the neighborhood expert and the concept of becoming a neighborhood expert. When I'm thinking about this, I look at it as really a twofold moment. You're going to see that over here on the side. It's going to be about knowledge and perception. You see, what I find interesting about neighborhood experts is that they tend to be just the person who's a perceived expert more so than a knowledgeable expert. So what I want to do is be able to marry these things. And what I mean by that is if you look at some of the people who you would consider neighborhood experts in a particular farming area, right? A zip code, a neighborhood, a master plan community, whatever it looks like. If you went and saw the person who that we would consider a neighborhood expert, there's a lot of reasons why we might consider them that. All of those reasons are more than likely going to fit into either a knowledge category or a perception category. What I find is that the perception is a bigger factor for who jumps in and is considered and or recognized as the neighborhood expert. And so I want to give some practicality towards the perception. And yeah, I want to cover the knowledge first. And the way that I look at this, so I was a painting and drawing major. And growing up, getting into that whole thing, I always had a big challenge with folk artists. And if you look at folk artists, it's not necessarily I had a challenge. I guess that sounds like I'm going to like pull out my sword and fight them. I had a challenge with the thought process of just going in and creating. I felt that there had to be some basis or some knowledge, right, in what is art, so that then as you express it, you can express it in a way that is meaningful to you and yet is grounded in some sort of expertise and some sort of knowledge. It's moving in a direction of knowledge. So I know that that's just my own personal opinion. And yet, if I look at those two things, I felt like somebody had to know how to draw before they could express themselves really well. They had to have the tools to express themselves. Now, I've changed my thought process on that. And yet, I want to draw the picture of when somebody comes in and they're the perceived knowledgeable, they're the perceived neighborhood expert, there still is some tie to knowledge that you have to be able to get into the space of being the neighborhood expert that has clout. And I think that's what we're all aiming for, is the neighborhood expert that has clout, so that when I come in and I sit in a listing presentation or I sit into some meeting, or if I sit into some even just community event where I'm invited to speak, I'm not just speaking from a space of, well, the neighborhood's great, it's awesome, there's neat things, here's some of the amenities. They're like, I don't know if you watched my YouTube or my blog, or instead of all these feeling and these surface level answers, you can kind of get into like the data that helps people create action in their lives, right? Data makes us think, feelings makes us move, or emotions make us act. If that's true, data has to happen first, and which is what I'm talking about. You got to learn to draw before you start slapping paint on a canvas. Knowledge before perception. So let's dig into that if you're okay with it. And so in knowledge, we're going to look at absorption rate. We're going to look at development in and around the community. We're going to understand a couple basic home/comp info stuff that has to happen. You've got to understand the basics of just what's happening from a home standpoint in the neighborhood. So let's take a look at some of these things that we're talking about, okay? I've left this a very unsophisticated PowerPoint because I want you to be able to grab it. If you could screenshot it and you want to be able to take this information, you're welcome to. Any and all of that, guys. This is for you to be able to use and to put immediately into your business. So I wanted to keep it simple so you could screenshot it if you had the desire to look at this list. And so when I look at absorption rate, I'm really having conversations about what an absorption rate is. And so for those of you who may not know, I want to have that basic conversation. When I look at absorption rate, I can go in and look at any single neighborhood. Then I can go in and say how many homes are active. Okay. And then I can look at, and in the last 30 days, how many homes have sold. I don't know if you noticed that I wrote it as a fraction. That's your absorption rate. 20% or higher is the seller's market. 15% or lower, it's a buyer's market. And so when we go in and we want to call ourselves a neighborhood expert, it's easy to say, hey guys, just so that you know, the absorption rate in this particular neighborhood is a 30%, which is really amazing time for anybody who's looking to sell their home and to be able to gain the lion's share of their equity. And here's what I mean by it, right? It creates a different conversation for us to have the data that backs up what we're having a conversation about. I will encourage you to go in and hit your little Google fingers and really dig into understanding what absorption rate is. That's not the lion's share of what this conversation is going to be about today. And yet, when you are armed with true data, we can then begin to have the emotional conversations. But we have to be armed with data. And so when I look at absorption rate, the other thing that absorption rate gives us, guys, is going to be this months on inventory for a particular neighborhood. A lot of our MLSs do a really great job of giving us this number. And yet, if you wanted to be more specific in your little microcosm, if you flip these over and you put the sold on 30 days on top of the active, that'll give you another number. It's usually going to be some sort of whole number with a decimal. It's going to be your months of inventory. So essentially, in our neighborhood seller, we're in a seller's market because the absorption rate is 30%, and we've got 2.8 months of inventory. Essentially, what you need to know from that is that if no other homes sold in 2.8 months, this neighborhood's flat. There are 0 homes on the market. And so when we are armed with this data, it gives us a different level of understanding. And especially when Joe Realtor might be in competition with me to gain a listing, and I walk in and I start having different level of conversations than everybody else, there is this necessity to have a knowledgeable, knowledge, I guess. I don't know how to say it otherwise. You have to have that knowledge of what the neighborhood data looks like, because that's our professionalism. Okay, that's our fiduciary responsibility. That's our advocacy. That happens in the data, because when I can explain the data to you in a way that helps you understand how to attach to this moment of selling, we can have the emotional side all day long, which is in perception. So moving on down, if you look in this list, development in and around the community. We've got to understand what's happening for development in and around. I had a conversation with a friend of mine one time, brilliant lady, very much a mentor of mine, incredibly sophisticated and very well to do. We're having a conversation. I said, I'm curious. You're incredibly smart. You're incredibly talented. You know more about many things than I do. You keep choosing me to be your realtor. Why? What are you doing in that? What is your reasoning behind that? And she was close enough to where I could have that conversation. I genuinely wanted to understand why. And she said, I can go and honestly do everything that you're doing. And it was like one of those vulnerable moments. She was like, I can go look for houses. And she started listing all the things that she can do. She says, what you do is you take all of that information and you help me understand it, how it pertains to the community. I was like, oh, well, thank you. That was good. She said, the other thing that you do, you help me understand what's happening around the community. I don't want to go looking on county records. I don't want to go looking in magazines. I don't want to go do my research of the neighborhood. That I don't have time for that. And so your understanding of what's happening in and around the neighborhood that I'm curious about purchasing a home, you are incredibly valuable to me for that. And that was that moment where I was like, I have to know neighborhood information so that then I can be a true neighborhood expert. That if I'm helping somebody see homes in a particular area, I can help them understand. One of the things, guys, when you're looking at this particular section, Grant Road is they are widening it, and when they widen Grant Road, they're going to take 6 to 8 feet of everybody who's back fence along this way. And so when we're viewing this home, I want you to look at and understand what that fence movement's going to look like for your purchase. What is it going to look like in your backyard? You see, that's a really great conversation to have with somebody out of the gate so they understand that, like, I know what's happening around this neighborhood. I can protect your investment. I'm the economic leader because I understand what the economics around are going. So, one of the things that I would say in this, so in the neighborhood, understanding what's happening in the neighborhood, you 100% should be looking at HOA documentation. You should be going into their websites, Googling their clickety, 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 Googling their neighborhood, understanding their HOA, and reading everything that their HOA has to put out there. They always have their documents, they always have their conversations, they'll talk about events and stuff. You can learn so much about a neighborhood just by going through those HOA documents, those HOA websites, and seeing what's happening. They are more than likely going to be talking about the projects that are happening in and around the neighborhood because the neighborhood has to vote on those things from the HOA standpoint. So go in there and dig into the HOA docs. A practical thing, go drive the neighborhood. Now, I know that we're talking about taking the time, right? This is a time heavy activity. And yet I have to do it once for a neighborhood. Okay, I just want to make sure we clarify. I only have to do it once for a neighborhood. I can go in and create a neighborhood profile and understand what's going on in that particular neighborhood. Most building projects are going to be in years, not just in days. And so if I built a profile about a neighborhood and understanding the building projects that were coming, I more than likely have the information that's going to be really pertinent for the next year or two. And so I just have to keep up with nailing a couple of things in the profile, but I don't have to recreate the wheel every time once I actually make this neighborhood profile. So I go drive the neighborhood and I'm driving around and I'm looking at what's happening. I can see the activity of what's happening. I can see that they're resurfacing the pools and they're redoing the tennis courts and they're doing this and they're actively widening the roads and they're adding stoplights. I can go and see. You've got to be able to drive the community. And here's the reason why, guys. If I walked into a big box store and I wanted to buy a computer, I'm not going to go over to like the furniture department and say, "Hey man, can you help me buy a computer? I've got some questions for you." He doesn't know that product. He walks the furniture store. I'm going to walk over there, and what's brilliant about that moment is I'm going to say, "What's the most comfortable couch in here?" And he's going to go, he's going to walk you over because he sits on everything. He tests it, he sees it, he's in it, he's of it. He walks that floor all day, every day. We need to have that same tenacity for our product. I think one of the disservices that agents have done is that we've collected information and we've collected clients instead of putting ourselves into the practice of becoming these knowledgeable experts. Okay. So that sounded very judgy, and I don't mean it to be. And yet, what can we do to raise the standard and be the professionals that we know that we are? Okay. All right. So the second thing, looking at the around. So the biggest thing here is the county information. What can you do to find out the county information? When I look at this, I'm looking at Google. I 100% am a Googling Googler. I Google the county name and economic development. So that little phrase, looking for a .gov site that's going to show me what's happening economically in that county. Because they're going to show me some of the development, what they're excited about. They're trying to attract business by building this site. And so if they're looking to attract business, they're going to show all of their best versions, all of their best qualities, what's happening economically. It's going to help me understand a lot about what's happening in that particular community, in that area, and sometimes specifically within neighborhoods, especially these master plan communities that have developments happening on the front end, back end, or they're flanking these neighborhoods. You're going to see what's going on around it. Okay. County webpage. So the not just the Google County, with the economic side. What is the county webpage? Going to the county web pages and looking through and seeing what's happening. It's a real quick, easy way to get it. Now, you can dig into the sticks and do a lot more research and knowledge. I think at some point we are overkill, but I will tell you, most people aren't even armed with this basic level of information, or at least even know how to give it away. Town or city web pages. So then I would go into the next level of a town or city. So obviously digging into Cypress or Kingwood or Atlanta or Dunwoody or whatever it looks like, whatever my little area is, where the neighborhood is located, where my client is curious about, can I understand that better? And if you're farming an area, it should be an automatic, do not pass go, do not collect $200, go and do these things. In our area, I don't know how nationwide this is, but in Houston, in and around Houston, there's a publication called Community Impact Magazine. I bet there's a version of this somewhere in your city. You've just got to start digging it up and looking for it. Community Impact Magazine. I happen to have one right here. It's a really great publication. It shows all of the businesses, what's going on, new businesses that are coming in, businesses that are closing, developments that are happening, what's going on with street work projects, what's going on with like all of the economics of the area. So the Community Impact Magazine summarizes a lot of that information for me. Okay. When I think about being a neighborhood expert, guys, it is about being a singular source for what's going on. What can you do to benefit from what's going on? What is the economics of it? How are you protecting your home, your investment, your purchase? Like, I become more than just the guy who is the poster child. I become more than just a face or a talking head. I become the one resource that people want to talk to, especially as I broaden and expand my horizons and people see that. And we'll talk about some of these perception things in a moment. That when I mix my knowledge into leveraging the technology, I beat everybody. Okay. And very few people are doing this. This is why I'm having this conversation today. The practicality of it is that very few people are doing this. If you started doing one or two of the things that we talk about today, I promise you it'll change everything. It will. It truly will. I believe it. Okay. So when we look at the last thing that we're going to have a conversation with is going to be the basic home and comp information. And I know that this is one of those moments, again, that are it's a duh statement for us. Yeah, of course you need to know what's going on with the basic home. Here's why it's so important. Most people in the consumer world will think in this terms. Here's this neighborhood. Here's this neighborhood. And here's this neighborhood. They're trying to get into a particular area. All these neighborhoods go to the same school systems. They go to the same this. They go to the same that. They fit the mold for the geographical location that they want to get. They think that this is what happens. This neighborhood value is going to be very similar on the outskirts of this neighborhood value because it's just one street over. Like we're right here. We're next to each other. And this neighborhood, so they look at everything more along the lines of this. They think everybody in these neighborhoods, that's the value of the neighborhood. And the reality is that we know the value of the neighborhood is very much specifically within this box. This is the value of the neighborhood. And so when we understand the basic information about the neighborhood, it helps us to have better conversations when it comes to the point of curiosities from our consumers about, gosh, this neighborhood is $110 a square foot. Literally, I could throw a rock across the street and hit another home. And you're telling me that that home is worth $120 a square foot? That I want that house. Like, why can't we get it for $110 a square foot? There's a lot of reasons why. And the reasons why will tend to have some sort of conversation within the average size. It'll have to do with the average price. It'll have to do with the types of homes. It'll have to do with like the pools, no pools conversations. It'll have to do with the amenities, the walkability of the neighborhood, the HOA restrictions, the deed restrictions. It's going to have a lot of different factors that are going to come into play. And when we're armed with understanding what my neighborhood is about, then I can have those conversations in a much clearer fashion, right? I now become, again, a neighborhood expert. And so when I talk and I flaunt the fact that I am a neighborhood expert and you come to me and we start having a conversation about like, what's the difference between this one and that one? It's like, man, that's actually a really great conversation. Most people get really confused because like you could drive down my street and take a left and there's a house that's not 25 yards from the house if you take a right, those two houses look almost exactly alike, and yet the HOA amenities in this neighborhood is literally nothing. A dilapidated park, and on the back end of the neighborhood are all the older homes that were built earlier on, and they're all falling apart and being bought up by investors. This side over here on this neighborhood, we have a different story. We have a golf course, we have a tennis court, actually two tennis courts, two pools, we have a playground, we have a splash pad. Like the amenities of the neighborhood are above and beyond, which bring in the dollar per square foot kind of value add. You look at all of the neighbors have pools, and so there's a value in having a pool. You look at the average price per square foot, the average home, the size of the average home. All of these things are really very relevant and necessary when we're getting into the space of, am I a knowledgeable expert in this particular area? So I hope this is all making sense. And I know it feels like a lot, and that slide was meant to feel like a lot. I hope that you grabbed it. And if you only went in and grabbed these three things on the knowledgeable side of things, the absorption rate, the development in and around the community, and the basic homes comps info, if you spent the time to develop that space and created a neighborhood profile, I promise you, it will elevate your game to the next level. You will never walk into a listing presentation or a buyer's presentation to where you feel inadequate to answer the questions that they might have, or when it comes along to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that question, I'm going to find out for you. Because what happens is that since we were able to talk about so many things, that one little anomaly doesn't feel like a lot. But if they ask us a lot of questions, we're going, that's a great question, I'm going to look into it. Oh, that's actually a great question, I'm going to look into it. That's it. When it becomes that moment where it's stacking up and it's like, we now aren't looking as if we have any clue what we're doing. Being a neighborhood expert is having a little bit of that knowledge, okay? Second thing we're going to talk about, which I said earlier, it's the most important thing, is the perception. So many people have a perceived perception of becoming that neighborhood expert, right? And so when I look at this, I'm going to go through and have a conversation about the small business supporter, the person leveraging tech, and the person doing the community events. These three things are the key elements that I'm looking at as perception within a neighborhood, okay? Here's what I believe is happening and what I see and why perception is so important. And when you mix perception with reality, I mean, you mix perception with the knowledge, like you become unstoppable. So if we're looking at that perceived expert, okay, the small business supporter is absolutely one of the most important things that you can be. A small business supporter is one of the absolute most necessary things that you can be. The small business community is it's a network in and of itself to where they take care of their own. It is like a tribe. If you are looking to become a neighborhood expert and you have the relationships of the small business, you have essentially the grassroots version of what's going on all around you. You will never lose when you have knowledge that comes from relationships. Now, obviously, there are things that you're going to have to go look up and back up. You know, we can't get all of our information from Facebook. We can't get all of our information from a coffee talk with our friends. And yet, if we look at that, it changes everything. And then your relationship with those small business owners, here's what's really happening in those spaces. Your relationships and your sharing in the network. That's a really important piece to the puzzle. If you're supporting small businesses and you're sharing them within your network, they now are putting you on blast in their space. Somebody comes in, hey, casual conversation about real estate. Oh my gosh, you got to talk to Randy. This guy knows everything. You should actually go. I think it's randyolive.com. Go look at his stuff. Like, he talks about this area all the time. He's your place, man. Just go and at least watch. When we have the support of that small business community, it really makes a big difference. I don't have a great data point or a great fact, right? This is one of those perception things. I can't go through and say, well, when people do this, it equals that. But what I do watch is just kind of that organic feature of real estate where I watch different markets, and it's funny about the person who people believe is the neighborhood leader and the person who has actual market share in the neighborhood often is a little bit off. And I think it's because of the way that somebody might be supporting small business or kind of moving into these other things. So leveraging technology. So if we look about that one, leveraging technology, here's what I'm thinking about that. Facebook ads are a big deal. So if you're not doing anything on the Facebook ad side of things, it's time to. You've got to be able to understand Facebook ads and what that looks like, what that means. Facebook ads, getting into YouTube. So a lot of our YouTube videos. Hello, welcome to YouTube. A lot of the YouTube videos in this space, I would encourage you to begin to create content that is about neighborhood stuff. Like, what is about neighborhood? Going in, supporting a local business, supporting that community. Do the community videos with them. Go in and be present with them, right? So creating those Facebook ads, creating the YouTube support, going in and creating community content to your social media, walk the neighborhood, be present in the neighborhood, talk about what's going on, show off the amenities, even in short spurts, whatever it may look like. You've got to build the data of what the neighborhood looks like, because one of the things that you get is this opportunity to be omnipresent to anyone at any time, which obviously is omnipresent, but that's the point. Like, I can have my content out there. People can be searching for or looking to be part of this neighborhood, part of this community, and they're going to immediately attach to me as the neighborhood expert. It's the perception side of thing. The person with the most amount of content for a particular space is getting all the hits, is going to be the person that people think is the neighborhood expert. The reality is that you don't ever have to sell a home in a neighborhood to be a perceived neighborhood expert. That's just true. Now, hopefully that begins to back up. You want to have the backup of that by closing deals in the neighborhood. But the reality is, you can become a neighborhood expert by choosing to become the neighborhood expert. It doesn't mean you have to have market share. Eventually, market share will come to you if you do the actions. The actions produce the results. And yet, all of these things that we're looking at now, it really is. If you can get into this and do these things, it's huge. Leveraging technology. The other thing that I want to hear, I'm going to show you a quick video real quick. This is, I say I'm going to show you a quick video real quick. Having a little bit of an issue over here. That's all right. We're all doing this very real. I apologize for the microphone. All right. So let me go in here and click on our PowerPoint. You know what? We might be frozen. So, Crystal, if you can't hear me, let me know. But I'm going to finish this up and make sure that it is kind of growing through. So, essentially, what I'm going to be showing you, or what my goal was to show you, is a video from a neighborhood. When I look at everything that's happening in technology, Keller Williams has created a real easy way to create these amazing neighborhood videos. And so when I look at creating these little moments, these little kitschy things, it's really something important. And I wish I could show this. What I'll do is I'll link this in to the comments, so that anybody who has a question or curiosity about it, you can come in and grab it. But man, when I look at this moment of creating these kitschy little videos, it helps people to visualize and immediately understand what's going on in the neighborhood. And I really do wish I could show you, but essentially it takes a graphical view of what's happening in the neighborhood, some of the Yelp style reviews that's going on in the neighborhood, some of the data that's happening in the neighborhood. And so it just kind of conglomerates it into this little tiny video that helps you to understand, what's going on in the space. I'm saying KW does this for its agents, but I know that there's more people who do these type of things. You've got to use what's available to you. It gives you an edge of professionalism. And if somebody if they're able to click in and see that, like, wow, you created this for this neighborhood, you think it was easy just to do something real simple. Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. Something's kitschy on my side of things, so I appreciate that. You can make these little, like, again, they're super simple, super kitschy little videos, little blurbs. And for us, we almost think, oh, that's too simple, that's too easy, that's nobody really cares about that. And yet the perception of the consumer is, I want simple, I want easy, I want to be able to click into this, see what's happening. And even though it doesn't show me to be the person that can, like, have the 12 paragraph conversation about this neighborhood, they don't want that. They want the person who's going to be able to simplify all that information so that I can experience it. The way we can simplify the information is to understand the information, to know the information, right? That's the knowledge part of it. The perception side of it is just create the things that you believe people want to see. And I'm going to use this as an analogy while my whole screens are frozen up, and I'm not even sure what screen it's on. In this whole analogy, I mean, this whole thing, I want to use an analogy. I went and got a new watch. I busted my Apple Watch. And so as I was getting my watch, I was like, I'm curious about what's happening with the Apple Watch. And so I started watching a video just to see like a quick rundown of like what was the updates to the iPhone or the Apple Watch 5. I had a 3, now I'm in a 5. I went from a 1 to a 3 to a 5. She began to talk about things that were just normal Apple Watch stuff. And I didn't care about that, but I didn't blow through it. And I had this moment where I was like, what's really interesting though? I didn't care about her talking about that thing. I was just ready for what was next. And I was okay to watch what was next. Like somebody who came in that the Apple Watch 5 was the very first watch they had ever bought, they're going to watch that and they're going to go, oh my gosh, this is blowing my mind. I didn't know you could do that. It's like, yeah, everybody, you could do that since Series 1. It's the same in Series 5. The person who's experiencing it for the first time doesn't know that. In our world, our clients will be experiencing real estate sales and purchases all over the place as far as their experience, from brand new to very seasoned. The seasoned agent isn't going to worry about your little kitschy intro. They want to see if there was anything new that they didn't know. If you're a real expert, they're going to see if there's anything you knew that they didn't know. If they're brand new to it, they're going to be enticed by the fact that you made this little kitschy video that's going to help them understand a couple of things and go, oh my gosh, yeah. And then we're going to roll through it. Think about some of the stuff that I watch as that have like really taken off even during the times of COVID. It's really interesting. The things that have taken off have been these little moments that I don't think any of us would say, my next marketing plan, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden now it's a viral thing. Like how many of us would have said, like, I'm going to put people's pictures on the side of the road that congratulating all the people who graduated from high school. Well, not many of us would have been like, yeah, that's the next big marketing plan. And yet, I was listening to a story the other day of a realtor who did that during COVID, made these giant photo headshots of this private school, put them along the fence just to congratulate every single senior. Well, that's a very small thing that made a huge impact that probably wouldn't be a normal marketing thing that made a huge impact. And so when I look at what's going on, there is nothing that is too big or too small that we should consider in the marketing process of doing some of these little bitty things that could have huge impacts. And so when I look at supporting, leveraging technology, it's about all of it. It's not just about the one thing or the second thing or the third thing. It's about all of the things. You got to be able to stack the technology into a space that's going from basic to very advanced. I think you've got to explore in all of it. The basic things, though, that I would say that you absolutely have to make sure you do is get into the Facebook advertising. Make some of these little simple videos that people can really grab the idea and the thought behind it. And then make sure you're a community supporter within your Facebook if you're really trying to build a market in that area to be the neighborhood expert. So the very last thing that I would say after the leveraging technology is to really get into the community events side of things. Okay. So when I look at the community events, I'm going to tell you, you need to do multiple things on this space. You need to have a community event that you're a part of, like communities throw events all the time. Go be part of it. The other side of it is build a community event. I'm going to tell you, it's real simple to build a community event. Find a need, build the need. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be hard. I think about a couple of things that actually pertain just to real estate. I have a shredder. I use my shredder all the time. I get to the point where they're inundated with documents that I'm like, I got to put them in the shredder. It goes in this bag. Got to put it in the shredder. It goes in the bag. All of a sudden, now I've got this big old bag of shredder. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all this crap? Well, I take it to a shredder event. Every once in a while, I'll see these things happening. Like it would take very little to do a shredding event in a community at a community center. Do it for free for the HOA. Let them know it's going to happen, and you just be there to help support, help do. And now you're part of the community. You look like you're enhancing and helping the community. Recycling, battery recycling, paint recycling, oil recycling. All of us have this garbage in our house that we've got to get rid of. We try to pretend like we're going to put it in a bag out by the street and see if they'll take it, knowing that it's the wrong thing to do. Hold a community event that's going to be able to bring some sort of community enhancement. Do something that, like, find a need from an HOA. I don't think we're using our HOAs enough as a leverage tool. HOA, what do you need? Well, we've got to plant 5 trees in the park. What if I've sponsored those trees? Could I do that? Like, most HOAs more than likely are going to say, Wait, you want to cut us a check? Yeah, sure. You can cut us a check. So when I look at everything that an agent wants to do to become a neighborhood expert, it's about the perception is about the marketing side of things. The knowledge is about knowing it. So it's a data that makes us think and emotions that makes us act. So it's melding those two things so that we can always create a movement towards market share. So if I were looking at what I was going to do from this conversation to be able to do something in my business, I would 100% go into the knowledge category first. Most of us get the perception side of things and are going to be naturally inclined to do some of that. We want to advertise in a supermarket, or we want to do some door knocking. We got whatever it may be that's that marketing piece that's in the perception. That's great. It really is. I would encourage you to go on the knowledge direction because very few people do this. Create the neighborhood profile, understand absorption rate, understand the development in and out of it, and understand the basic home. It's going to make you a better agent. It's going to have you paying more attention. Your ears are going to perk up to have the conversations with people when their information may be misguided or wrong. I don't want to say it, but wrong. You can pipe up and you can have the conversations then that make you look like the true neighborhood expert and not just the guy who has a pretty face driving around waving at people in the neighborhood. So this is my conversation to you. If I were going to give you anything else that I would say, get open house signs in yards. It's your best tool for marketing. So that's my little asterisk. This is what you do. All right. If there's any questions, I know there's a few people who are on with us. I'm happy to answer those questions. I am sorry I got a little bit sidetracked in there. My screen is all froze up. I can see that it's froze up. I didn't know if it was happening to you guys, so thank you to Crystal and Rob for helping me get connected and know that y'all are still there. And so I do apologize for a little bit of the flabbergasted moment there a little bit ago. And I appreciate you guys just sticking with me. So do y'all have any questions or anything specifically about any of the information that we covered today? I'd love to be able to make sure that I can open those up for you. If not, that's also okay. If you see down below me, everything that always scrolls through is how you can get in touch with me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can email me, mvv@randyolive.com. You can find me, obviously, here on YouTube. Subscribe. I would love for you to be able to subscribe. We bring this kind of content all the time. I'm going to continue to do some of these things, and I'm going to start bringing some consumer information to the table so that then you guys can just rip off and duplicate anything that I give you. I'd love to see all agents succeed at a high level. It's just not about what we can do to take care of ourselves. It's what we can do to raise the body of agents, right? A rising tide raises all ships. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, if you ever wanted to get into some sort of one-on-one consultation or whatever, I do these things all the time. You're welcome to email me, reach out to me, and let's get that on the books because I want to truly help out as much as I can wherever I can. And so if there's something that I can do for you, by all means, let me know. Y'all are awesome. Thank you very much, and go have an amazing day.